But for the sake of time, the only thing I'll contain my own comments because we don't have enough time, and we have four speakers in this second one. And therefore, I'll request each one to devote about 10 minutes, and so that we can have 1 or 2 minutes more. And of course, China's has released various defense doctrines over time. In 1980, it used to follow the near coast defense doctrine, then it moved to near seas control, and then it moved basically to integrating the global economy in the overseas markets. And in 2010, their white paper, in fact, suggested the importance of having overseas logistics facilities. Since then, they started from 2013 to 2025, just in 12 years, how far have they reached? In recent times, we have also seen again that they are looking at the Indian Ocean essentially as a strategic point for them, and they are working on it. Recently, also, we have heard that they released the Mandarin names of 19 seabed features in the Indian Ocean, which Dr. Sriparna will know about, and the Chinese research and survey vessels are all coming up. So, I think I'll stop here. We have a lot of challenges, and the people and countries that are represented here. We have friends from Australia as well, and Dr. Satoru Nagao is here, and Mr. Jose from the Philippines. So all of us can be said to be somehow being the victims of the Chinese hegemony in one way or the other. So therefore, I would say that we need to talk about the quickly exactly what's happening according to your perspective and your own country's perspective especially, and how we can try to deal with it. I would not say contain because that's not our policy, but we need to be able to deal with it. So I would request Professor Sriparna Pathak to kindly use about 8 to 10 minutes to say what you want because you're not showing the.
Sure. Well, I'll just show it to you so that it's easier to region. It's not something new. It's been going on for the last 2 decades. It's just that the effects of it are now showing. So it's something that China planned earlier and it has put it into place and it's now showing effects. And I'm sure it has much more plans which will be much more worrisome. It needs to strategically, economically and militarily dominate the Indian Ocean region because it's a part of China's broader Belt and Road Initiative, particularly the Maritime Silk Road. Because of this, in the Indian Ocean region, China is always going to focus on securing trade routes to access resources and to extend geopolitical influence. Now, the moment it wants to extend its geopolitical influence through its economic outreach in particular, that becomes a headache for India. China's economic engagement in the Indian Ocean region, it spans port development, which includes infrastructure projects, trade agreements, investments under the framework of the BRI. And the key aspect of this includes port development and infrastructure projects. It's financed or operated over 21 ports across the Indian Ocean region, primarily through state-owned enterprises like China Merchants, Port Holdings, and COSCO Shipping. Some of these projects include the Gwadar port in Pakistan, which is part of the CPEC, which is violative of India's sovereignty. Also, Gwadar could have dual usage for military purposes. Then there is Hambantota, because China has taken a 99-year lease in 2017, and none of us is going to exist for 99 years. So it's for practical reasons, it's China's. Djibouti, China's first overseas military base, was actually established in 2017. It supports its naval operations in the region. It's adjacent to the Dorale multi-purpose port, which was developed with Chinese assistance. Then there's the Kwakpyu port in Myanmar. It's part of the CMEC, China-Myanmar Economic Corridor. That will help it to get access to the Bay of Bengal and it can bypass the Malacca Strait. Trade and investment is a very important node through which China is reaching out or influencing the Indian Ocean region economically. It's already a major trading partner for many Indian Ocean region countries, especially in South Asia, East Africa, and West Asia. It has heavily invested in energy resource extraction because the Indian Ocean region has humongous amounts of oil and gas supplies. It also engages in diplomatic and economic leverage because it uses economic aid, loans, investments to cultivate goodwill and influence amongst the Indian Ocean region states. It's given significant amount of loans to Sri Lanka, which eventually ensured that it fell into a debt trap. It's also done the same with Maldives, it's done it with Pakistan, and so on. It has diplomatic missions in all 6 IOR island nations, Comoros, Madagascar, Maldives, Mauritius, Seychelles, Sri Lanka, unlike the US, which has fewer embassies in the region. And then, attached with this are its research and survey activities and so on. Primarily, what China says is that all of this outreach is economic in nature because it wants to secure the sea lanes of communication. Let's take the example of just Sri Lanka. If it has to secure the sea lanes of communication, why does it need to lease out the port for 99 years? That's not something that is done normally. That's violation of sovereignty. And over the years, if this continues, this will be the normal mindset of any borrowing country. That the moment I cannot repay, I have to give up part of my sovereignty. So it's also rewriting the established rules of borrowing and lending. And of course, it's going to counter regional powers, primarily India, US, and so on. And it's going to expand military research, economic dominance, and so on. I'll leave the military bit for sir. What I wanted to quickly show to the chair and to whoever I can show the screen to is that these are trade statistics for India's neighbors for 2024. Now we have, in some places, we do better than China. In Bhutan, of course. In Sri Lanka also. Very minuscule, but we have done better. This should be considered a huge win, given the fact that Sri Lanka owes a humongous amount of debt to China. In Maldives also, we have a better trade in 2024 than China. Bangladesh is a lost cause, Pakistan, never mind. In Nepal, again, we have a humongous trade advantage as compared to China. We need to ensure that this advantage continues. There are a lot of projects which India has completed in South Asian countries, Nepal in particular. Bhutan, Bhutan is a all-time friend. In Bhutan also we've done that. But we never sell this narrative out. What happens is that our neighbors get played by China because it keeps up promoting.
Component will not sustain. So thank you so much. But before I get going, must thank Usanas Foundation for having invited me. Avi, thank you so much. Compliments to you, Anita. And thanks to the ambassador, since we know for quite some time. My presentation is made easy, but it's becoming complex. Without the slides, I really can't get going ahead, but I'll speak off the cuff. So, never mind.
Do you want to use my laptop? You can.
Then it's okay. So, it's better this way. In formal way, it's better. So, time starts now. And what we discussed in the preceding part, as per my understanding, also forms a very significant component to be factored in and taken cognizance of in this part of our deliberation. Influence operation willy-nilly is playing a very significant role in the subcontinent. Before I get going ahead, I would start with the commercial basket of 21st century. There is a book written, the name of the book is Monsoon, the Indian Ocean and the Future of American Power, Robert D. Cartler. In that, he has emphasized the increasing importance of South Asia in shaping global power in 21st century. He has identified India, Pakistan, China, Indonesia, Burma or Myanmar, Oman, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh and Tanzania. He has come to the conclusion that the fight for democracy, energy independence and religious freedom will be lost or won here. Hence, we would do well if the global geopolitics and the geoeconomics focuses on this particular corridor. Next is we are discussing this issue in the early part of 21st century. The threat which was there prevailing in 20th century is no longer relevant in 21st century. From geopolitics, we have migrated to a factor known as geoeconomics, in which China has been given the center of gravity role to play. In this geoeconomics battle, what is actually panning out is what we came to the domain in 21st century way back in 2007, and that 2007 was the factor of Indo-Pacific, which earlier had a separate identity, but post-Japanese Prime Minister, may his soul rest in peace, ever since he addressed the Indian Parliament, this terminology gained a lot of traction. But it died its own death for a couple of years until 2017, when Donald Trump came and actually reintroduced. He gave a lot of impetus to this terminology, meaning that the three significant and important components of Pacific and the Atlantic and Indian Ocean. He said that it is Indian Ocean which is forming the part of the West Pacific, the central part being the ASEAN, and the eastern part towards Hawaii side is the eastern component. So, conceptually speaking, the Indo-Pacific may sound to be a very run-of-the-mill kind of a terminology, but I think it is actually assumed a lot of importance, and that brings me to very important aspect of geostrategic and the geo-economic importance before I come to the Indian Ocean region per se. It's the most populous corridor. It has got Asia, Africa, Australia and America. It has got 60% of the world population, approximately 4.3 billion people. It's a global economic center which comprises of 2/3 of the global economic output. Rest all are given in my slides, but most important line I wish to highlight is more than 50% of the people in this corridor, Indo-Pacific, that is approximately 2 billion people, they live in democratic countries. It's very important to highlight, only then we'll come and focus onto the Indian Ocean, which I started with my presentation. And last point is, this particular corridor or this spectrum has got very large economies. India, USA, China, Japan and Australia. Now let's see the next part which I wish to cover and highlight is why is it growing so significant? It is growing significant. The two separate entities connected by number of seas in between has actually witnessed some important economic activities in past couple of years, thereby highlighting this particular corridor and the relevance of it. There are 40 countries in the economies in this corridor or this spectrum. They account for 60% of world population, like I have already brought out, 65% of the world GDP lie here, and importantly 5 countries, the People's Republic of China, Japan, you have India, you have Republic of Korea and Australia put together, the economic GDP works out to approximately 31.84 trillion. When you compare this with the European Union with 27 countries, the latest which I worked out yesterday comes to around 20.29. 20.29 the European Union, and these countries straddling across the Indo-Pacific coming to 31.5 main countries, 31.8.
And now I'll request Dr. Nagao. My friend, are you there? Yeah. So Dr. Nagao, now we request you to kindly focus from the Japanese angle. What are the new changes in the Indo-Pacific strategy, and how do you look at the Indian Ocean and the China's presence here in the overall strategy of the Indo-Pacific? Now, kindly, just about 8 to 10 minutes, please. You can't show it. Oh,
Yes.
Great.
Can you see?
Yes.
Thank you very much. It is honor for me to make presentation, and it is also the honor to hear about the project of the Matabari, which is Shinzo Abe's Japan's project to counter Sonadia port project of China.
Good.
So that has succeeded, but now Japan need to invest and to build this Matabari port, and huge cost Japan need to pay in this case. So we are worried about our wallet. Anyway, to counter China, we need the cooperation. That's what I want to say. But anyway, firstly, we need analysis the China's project in the Indian Ocean, and we have already, other presenters already mentioned about infrastructure project in the Indian Ocean region. China is investing, so that's why I should not repeat this. But indeed, there are 3 categories China has done in this place. First one is infrastructure project with high interest rate, but another one is arms export. Indeed, this is also important because China is exporting the submarine to Pakistan, Bangladesh, or latest fighter jet to Myanmar, or they try to sell the Sri Lanka too. But anyway, this kind of weapon is affecting India's strategy in this region. And weapon is a very sensitive machine, high-tech machine, but using under very rough condition. So maintenance crew check again. That's why they can operate. without a supply of the repair parts, weapon is just a garbage. And some categories of weapon needs ammunition too. So that's why supply of the repair parts and the ammunition is most important part of the weapon export. So once the China exports weapon, this country rely on China because of the supply chain. And training is also matter because how to use this weapon. Trainer, instructor come and train the crew, local crew. That is needed. This means that Chinese officers come to this region and using these weapons export, they try to train these local officers, local armed officers. During that process, China collects information. So weapon export is also a big matter, and especially exporting submarine to the Bangladesh and Pakistan is matter of concern. And another one is, of course, China's deployment. Their own forces is very important. 6 which regularly operated in the Indian Ocean region. The Chief of Naval Staff, Admiral Ramba. So that's why this is also concern. And now they set up the naval base in Djibouti and expanding. That is a very important matter. Because in case of Djibouti, like the other infrastructure project, on surface China said this is not military purpose, but they invest a lot. And after that, Djibouti have the huge debt to China, and they accept China's naval base in their country. So viewed from that process, this is also the part of China's ambition. And now when we check the pillar in the Djibouti, China's naval base, they are expanding with the aircraft carrier. So that is other president also already mentioned. So I should not repeat, but this is concern. So the problem is why China try to do such kind of thing? China's motivation is a matter of concern. Indeed, view from China's sense of security, or view from the location China is investing, we can understand why. This is a map I try to show the location, the China deployment, military deployment, investment, this kind of thing. When we check this route, we can identify what it is. Because all of the...
Against the backdrop of all that's happening these days in the sea, particularly the Baluch rebellion, it has intensified. TTP has made a strong penetration in that region. TTP has even, joined up with the Baluch rebels, and the violence is increasing with every passing day. So, given that, how do you see the future of CPEC? And how do you see, will China ever be able to stabilize or, work peacefully in that region? That's my first question. And secondly, you mentioned about the naval aspect, because that was the main crux of the topic, about the submarines that China has deployed and all. But I have a question pertaining to the air superiority, this domain. So, given that, we have right now about 28 squadrons, that's a rough estimate that I know. And it is said that back in 1962, it was said that, to fight a two-front warfare with China and India, where Pakistan, both India needs at least around 42 or 56 to 57 squadrons. But and currently also the fleet is also, it's like mostly old-fashioned. China has come up with its fifth-generation aircraft. And so given that, how do you see, if there is any situation of a two-front warfare between with India, Pakistan and China, so how do you see India reacting to that?
Excellent. Two fantastic questions. Time doesn't permit me. Each of them will take 1 hour to cover, but very briefly, Chinese are known for very, long-term perspective planners. CPEC and CMEC, they may have come into reality or existence in recent past, but they thought about it way back in 1949. We may not realize, since you are a student of history, just turn the pages, you will find. Okay, and Xinjiang, that time used to be East Turkmenistan, or Turkestan.
Yes.
It was not a part of China, and so is the case of Tibet. So they had a plan in place in their mind, and they wanted to get closer and closer, have secure access with the warm water ports. That's the plan there. No insurgency or terrorism has ever lasted for eternity. Third, for you and me, it may be a kind of a disposable option, but for China it is a necessity. Why it is a necessity is from Persian Gulf to Gwadar, maximum 1.5 to 2 days time. From Gwadar, they have already, I am told, as per the classified input, the pipeline has been laid.
Yeah.
Hydraulic mechanisms are in place. 1500 kilometers, and they will be able to pump the fossil fuel directly to Kashgar. Kashgar, incidentally, in Xinjiang province is holding out. There are 6 BRI projects. Out of 6, there are 4 BRI projects in Xinjiang itself. Kashgar is central, it's a communication center. So they say in one day they will be able to pump so much of gallons, millions of gallons of oil. Kashgar becomes the central point. Third point I'm saying. Fourth point, we need to understand why CPEC or CMEC are coming. Why is it laying stress? There are 2 provinces in China out of 31, 32 jitne bhi hai, which are landlocked. One is the Yunnan province, the other one is Xinjiang province. They are so landlocked, Yunnan province, despite giving an orientation and impression of being closer to the seaboard, eastern flank, it is still 1,600 kilometers away. This way, if they actually take the Chakfu is the port which they have developed, up to Yunnan, okay, Kunming is the headquarters. They, similarly like CPEC, they will be able to pump the fuel faster. Same is the case with the CPEC. So therefore, for us, it may be an alternative option, but for China, since you have already dilated on the issue of Malacca dilemma, it is restricted by only one option. The shortest, the closest which will come to its benefit in times of criticality is going to be CPEC. Over and above that, Turkmenistan has got the 4th largest reserve of the natural gas. They also want to connect with Turkmenistan across Afghanistan, okay, and then connect it at this place, Punjab, CPEC alignment, and pump gas from there. So this is as far as, rest all I can discuss with you separately. As far as the air superiority, there is a point in what you say. How has this equation or this factor of 42 squadrons been made? It is not 57, it is 42 squadrons are authorized or sanctioned or required on ground. Who has made this calculation? Pakistan front, 20 squadrons. China front, 20 squadrons. 40 squadrons. And Indian Ocean region, 2 squadrons, 42 squadrons. At any
So we really think about, for us, it's the Pacific Ocean, and we have lots of neighbors near us with which we've had very long-standing relationships and consider part of our family. And in the last few years, we've had to deal with, especially on the narrative front, a lot of problems. And I think that's one of the key parts of my job here in India, is to have these conversations with people. So I know we've gone over time and I won't go into it too much now, but I look forward to talking to all of you, A, about Australia's experience and Australia's history, B, how we dealt with the region, security partnerships happening a stone's throw away from our borders, and C, about how we managed unfair trade measures against us and managed to find diversification. So that's all I'll say. Very short. I didn't prepare anything, but just wanted to say that.
Dr. Nagao, you want to add something?
I have 2 quick questions.
Yeah, Abhinav has some questions for you. You know, his questions are always difficult.
Hear me? Dr. Nagao? I think you are on mute.
Unmute
Please
yourself.
unmute yourself.
We keep coming in the TV channel.
Yeah, he's so.
Dr. Nagao.
Yeah, now it's good.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. So Dr. Nagao, I would just like to know a bit more about the remilitarization of Japan, and that too in the context of the new American leadership, you know, advocating the idea of the American withdrawal from the major global conflict theaters. I mean, how does Japan feel about it? Do you feel that you need to be more self-reliant and just, you know, activate your defense preparations? I mean, do you feel uncomfortable, uneasy?
Yes, US is extending the range of missiles. That is important because along with China's military modernization, the US bases in Japan is under threat of China's missile. And they also try to reorganize the military forces location because they try to share the security burden in their strategy. So frontline country like Japan is, if China try to push Japan, the Philippines, Taiwan, these countries need to defend the lines, but US want to maintain the backside to mobilize their force any places they need. This is frontline countries' role and reinforcement forces' role. That is two types of the forces the US is thinking. So once China breaches some part of the defense line, US will come the reinforcement. Or once US need to start offensive operation, mobilized forces stay in the backside is free, so they can go any places they want. So that's why militarily it is logical. But view from Japanese, this is not good because if the US withdraw from the base in Japan, simply said, hostage is escaping. Once China tries to attack, if the US force is located in Japan, China attacks the US forces also. In this case, automatically US will join this war. So that is the reason the US force in Japan is hostage. So US asked Japan to possess offensive capability or sharing the security burden. That's why they asked Japan to pay more for the defense. So we increase our capability. That's true. We improve the capability. That's true. But at the same time, we try the US force to stay in Japan as a hostage. So once China starts to attack the southwestern island of Japan, yes, the US also joined this operation to defend China's offensive. And in case of the Taiwan crisis, we can imagine that could happen because if China do not attack Air Force base in Japan, this will be the sacred places. Anytime the fighter jet or bomber can fly from Japan and attack China's invasion force and return to the sacred place. So that's why to win in the Taiwan, they need to attack base in Japan. So in this case, we try the US force to stay in Japan as a hostage, and the US cannot escape. That is Japan's strategy. So Japan's military forces start to possess aircraft carrier, long-range missile, but at the same time, this is not meaning US and Japan separated. This is one full strategy that exists in this place, and we coordinate well. But that is my answer. Is it the right answer to your question?
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you very
Good
much.
answer.
Thank you.
Well done.
Yes. So with this,
Can I just quick to Filipino
Yes.
gentleman? I don't know his name.
Jose.
Mr. Jose, good evening. General Sudhakar here. A great job being done by Philippines, and I just wanted to know, is there any agreement signed between USA, Philippines, Australia and Japan for coming to each other's assistance in case of offensive or a conflict being unleashed by China against Philippines?
The clearest basically is, of course, the Philippine-US Mutual Defense Treaty.
Mutual defense treaty. Okay.
But mutual defense treaties with other countries, there is no signed treaty. Actually, strictly speaking, the only treaty partner we have when it comes to mutual defense or an ally coming to our defense is actually the United States. That's the only existing treaty that we have. Okay? But there are, like for example, in the case of Japan, it is expanding. If I'm correct, if I understand correctly, and this was even years ago, more than 6 years ago, that Japan has been expanding the areas where it considers as part of its national interest, and this includes also the sea, the waterways. Okay, so that's why if ever there is a problem in freedom.
Well, we don't have that huge a presence as Australia and New Zealand do. But the fact also is that a lot of our diaspora or Indian origin people live there, which is why we spend quite a bit in ensuring that there is stability. That being said, there are certain Pacific Island nations where neither can Australia, New Zealand, US or India enter the exclusive economic zones, but China can. So that's also a source of concern for us. Primarily South Asia remains of a huge concern. We watch Australia and Japan very closely, and now Philippines as well, because the weaponization of trade is something which China regularly does. It's not been able to do that sort of a thing as it has done to Japan and Australia in particular. It's not been able to do the same sorts of things to India so far, but that doesn't mean it will never happen. So it's good that we could have such a contrasting or comparison of different regions, because China's approaches will pretty much be from the same playbook. It will just tweak it based on whether it's Philippines, based on whether it's India, based on whether it's the US, and so on. But it's the same playbook. If we can compare notes, we will be better guarded. We take some lessons from Japan, whenever the Senkaku Islands dispute flares up starting from 2010, China starts, controlling rare earth metal exports just to punish China or engage in illiberal trade. Similarly, it happened with Australia when, the Wuhan virus spread to the world. It's not been able to do that to us or something as damaging as that to us because we take lessons.
Great point.
So with this, we come to the end of the first day closed sessions, and I can see an MSS cat behind Mr. Jose.
Okay.
Is that cat from the Chinese Secret Service?
That's the other participant.
So I'm really thankful to all of you for your enlightening views. Definitely it was a great learning experience for me also to be on board and to listen to such eminent experts on the activities of China in the IOR region and the China influence operations. Here I would also like to thank Consortium of Indo-Pacific Researchers and Dr. Indu, who is representing that organization. They are our knowledge partners in Maharana Pratap Annual Geopolitics Dialogue. I would like to thank Kutz. Puru is here from Kutz. They are also our knowledge partners. And I would like to thank all the moderators, session chairpersons, Puru, Ambassador Triguna, and all the esteemed panelists, General Sudhakar, Dr. Pathak, Dr. Nagao, and Mr. Pasi, Namrata, Mr. Hosika.
Nitin Gokhale.
Yes, Mr. Gokhale. Yes, he's not here. That's it. So, and finally, before ending, I think that we're discussing some critical questions related to China's playbook and strategy. We also need to ask some fundamental questions. With the way things are unfolding in the Middle East, it seems that Mr. Trump will be able to get the peace on the Ukrainian front. But it seems that since Israel is facing an existential threat from Iran, that's how Israel perceives it. They're going to ramp up activities in the Middle East, and the recent statements by President Trump regarding Gaza simply shows that things are not going to be that easy in the Middle East. So maybe 5 years, 10 years down the line, US may not be able in that position to support Israel against Iran because of the emerging global security architecture, China, Russia posing up with each other. So I guess because of that reason, it becomes really critical for the Israel to do something about Iran at this moment. And it seems that the US will be busy with that. But when that happens, if the US efforts, resources, and attempts are totally focused in the Middle East, what does China do in the Indian Ocean region or in the Taiwan region? I mean, how will China unfold things in that region? That is something which we should really think about. Secondly, we are thinking about this China's aggression, China's rise, but then we really need to ask this question. I mean, is this rise, more of concrete? Definitely in the world of economics and finance, we see that they're majorly dominant the supply chain structures. But there is something which is also happening on the other side. The West-led system, the Westphalian system or the Bretton Woods system, that's actually declining, and the democracy is facing an internal crisis in the Western world order. The multilateral institutions which the US-led West created after the Second World War, they are facing a serious existential challenge. Global South wants more representation. Global South wants an economic structure.